Hello and a very warm welcome to Political Economy with Shweta Puj. This week we have a young business leader, vice chairperson of the 200-year-old Shashwat Goenka Group, a big legacy that Shashwat Goenka seems to carry with a lot of ease. Well, even as we speak today, a significant geopolitical developments have happened which only underline the importance of building a strong business in uncertain times. So, Shashwat, let me begin by asking you the one question that probably, a lot of people are thinking about, that the challenge of building a business in today's times. What are the uncertainties that you as a business leader you're working with?
First and foremost, thank you so much, Shweta, for having me on the show.
No.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I think we live in uncertain times, and it's not just geopolitical that I'm talking about. It's more so even from the business environment point of view, right? While we have a lot more clarity and stability in business policies in our country, what's changing is, I think the speed of disruption in every industry is increasing, and technology and now even AI is playing a core role in that. So I think when I look at challenges in the business, it's really about looking at how can you stay ahead of what's going to be that next disruption? How can you stay aware of it and participate in it at the right time?
So, Shashwat, and of course, that challenge only gets more aggravated, I guess, when you have a 200-year-old legacy to take forward. How does one work with that? What is the challenge of it? What is the thrill of it? What are the pulls and pressures that you work with?
When you look at our group, it's been a group that's constantly reinvented itself. It's been a group that's reinvented itself to stay relevant for a particular time in period, right?
Right.
Or a particular period in time. And I think that's the mantra that we have is how do you constantly reinvent yourself to keep staying relevant? So whether it's in the retail industry, whether it's in the consumer industry, whether it's in the electricity space, whether it's in now energy, whether it is in manufacturing and chemicals, how do you constantly keep redefining what you define as success? How do you keep redefining benchmarks? How do you lead benchmarks? And therefore keep reinventing yourself? Because I think the world is changing very quickly. The consumers' tastes and preferences are changing very quickly. How businesses adapt and respond to this change is really what will determine how successful you are. And so for us, the mantra has always been about reinventing, whether it's reinventing existing businesses or understanding what are new business areas that are going to have massive potential and how do we as a business house enter into that.
So, Shashwat, a lot of the group is into consumer facing businesses, which are very difficult to crack, and not every business house succeeds at it. But the RPSG Goenka Group seems to have cracked the code on several of those on those counts. What is it? I mean, how do you think about approaching a consumer led business? And what is it that you, as a young leader, bring to the group? As in, what is inside an anatomy of the mind of Shashwat Goenka? Just to say that, because you have Mr. Sanjeev Goenka, who has built the business up to the levels that we've seen, and now you're clearly, spearheading it in its next phase of growth. So, the difficulty of working with consumer-led businesses, how do you think about it? How do you go about it? What is the kind of research that if you could give an overview to our viewers?
So I think when we look at consumer businesses, right, we are very, very clear that the consumer is at the center of it, right? And today, consumers' preferences are changing very quickly. So how do you stay agile as an organization to quickly make those changes, right? Because that is what will determine relevancy in the minds of the consumer for your brand and therefore success for your brand. And I think that's the mantra that we apply, right? In terms of identifying trends, quickly delivering on products that capture those trends. And then if they work, figure out ways to grow them fairly quickly.
Okay.
If they don't work, push them out and move on to the next trends.
Okay, so what is your style of leadership if you were to define that? And how different is it from Mr. Sanjeev Goenka's style of leadership? Because you've been there is a lot that you take from your elders, but then you have to have your own style, your own thinking. So what is it that you bring? What is it that you try to do differently in the group?
So I talk about my style.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it is very important to have a culture that is enabling and empowering. You know, we are good with what we do, but we're not good with everything. And there are people today, our teams, who are good in different domains, in different departments, in different subjects. And it's really about how do you bring them all together, right? And so for me, a culture which is very empowered, a culture which does not differentiate between seniority basis, age, or number of years of experience, but a culture that is enabling people to ask the right questions, to take risks, and to follow through with their courage of conviction, right?
Okay.
I think for me, these are the things that I am looking to create or creating. And I think that is what becomes important, because at the end of the day, you're only as strong as your weakest link. Right. And so you have to ensure that every member of the team is good at what they do, but also keeps in mind the larger objective of the organization.
Okay. So how do you break that down, in terms of management? A lot of organizations across the world are having a rethink on middle management. There is a lot of, talk about creating a flat organization structure. So is that something that the group, RPSG Goenka Group, is also thinking about? What is it in terms of, management practices that you're bringing in?
I think organization structures, whether it's many layers or flat, is not really how we're looking at the businesses.
Okay.
What we are trying to do is create businesses that have a lot of agility and no bureaucracy, right? So irrespective of whether it's flat or whether it has layers, and this usually depends on size, scale, industry, and the nature of businesses in that industry. But for us, we've ensured that there is free-flowing communication across all levels, and it doesn't have to go through channels in that sense. It's about everyone being able to put their point of view across, use data, use logic, everyone having.
So if there is someone in a meeting with you, for instance, an intern, and if he or she has a point that she wants to pitch to you, she does not have to go through, say, 5 layers before getting to you. She can
No.
come directly to you.
Absolutely. If you're in that meeting, you are there, you have an equal seat at the table, and you're there because your point of view needs to be heard.
But what's the likelihood of that intern being there at that meeting?
Pretty high, honestly. And when you really look at all of the new businesses that we've inculcated over the last decade, they have all been businesses that have come with no history or baggage. And so the transition there has, of course, has been creating that new culture. But we've been able to effectively do this across our organizations as well, even the legacy ones, because I think everyone today sees value in being challenged, in looking at how to do things in a different way, if it adds to top line or margins or bottom line, and if it leads to good growth for the company. So I think it's about looking at, when you have that larger vision of what is the organization wanting to do in mind, then it doesn't matter whose idea it is. It's about, were you able to even get the idea, and were you then able to execute on it as an organization? And I think gone are the days, at least for us, where people said, oh, that was my idea and it's so successful. It's now more about what were the ideas that we as an organization had, and how can we kind of deliver successfully on that.
Are there any specific areas that you ask your team to focus on? Is there that, okay, these are the 5 things that Shashwat will be looking at? Any such, is there a checklist like that your team works with?
From a business point of view, definitely how are we growing vis-a-vis competition? But more importantly, how sustainably are we growing, right? So revenues, EBITDA, PAT, cash flows. I think these are the things that we apply across all of our businesses, no matter what they are. And then each industry has its own nuances, so we look at those as well. And I think the other thing that I really look at, and I work with my teams on that, is to say that, okay, if this is where we are today, this is where we want to go. That's a great place that we want to go, but we need to have very detailed building blocks for how we are going to get there. so that we start monitoring those on a fairly regular basis as well to see how we are moving against each of them, right? And I think one last thing that I always encourage my teams is be aware of what's happening in the world, in your industry, in competition, but also don't get distracted. Be focused on what it is that we need to achieve.
So what is it that the group is looking at achieving?
I think Dad spoke about it some time ago. Is we're looking at a 2 lakh crore market cap, and we've actually worked across our businesses to build over 700 building blocks in totality, but each business having a few that we are working on to kind of get there.
Okay. Okay. I know that this is a silent period for you, but what are the specific businesses that you are really bullish on? Are there specific levers that you're looking at accelerating to drive this growth?
So when you look at our group overall, almost every sector we're in and every business you're in is going to grow and grow exponentially, both in terms of top lines and bottom lines. Whether you look at our energy business, which is diversifying with getting into green energy, whether you look at manufacturing and chemicals business, which originally was essentially carbon black, but has now moved on to chemicals, and we're looking at battery chemicals and a few other areas there as well. To whether you look at First Source, which was our original IT-enabled services company, but very BPO focused, to now becoming the un-BPO AI-led company, right? To our consumer ventures, our media and entertainment ventures, our sports ventures. Each one of these are segments I'm extremely bullish about. And that's why you're seeing capital allocation across each of these businesses with growth and expansion plans across each one of them as well.
Okay. How would you describe your organization's culture? Because culture really defines how people, how much of how people act at work, what are they able to achieve, and of course, determines the growth trajectory. So, how would you describe your organization's culture?
I think when you look at our organization and the group, I think we have a culture of empowerment where we believe that each leader and their team is best suited to grow a particular industry or a company, right? And we work with them closely to see how we can push the envelope a little bit further on how can we get superlative performance, and more importantly, how can we lead the industry on benchmarks, right?
Okay.
So that's what we do. But overall, it's a culture of empowerment, along with which comes high degrees of accountability and responsibility.
Okay. How about AI? How do we see the integration of AI into your core businesses and driving growth?
So I think AI is not an option anymore. It is very much a necessity, and it is very much something that everyone needs to adopt, and adopt across every aspect of the organization, right from seeing how can AI help you become more efficient in daily processes or mundane processes, to how can you use AI to actually even help you with tasks which are not that everyday and mundane, but more complex in a way, right? And how do you use it as a tool and not view it as a threat, right? And how do you kind of adopt AI to help you grow exponentially, right? And we're doing this across each one of our businesses, right? So whether you look at our generation business, our distribution business, whether you look at our music business, whether you look at, of course, First Source, to even now looking at our media ventures, right? We are using it across the board.
Okay. And what's the outlook? How much more AI adoption can we see? Any specific business operations that we see getting outsourced to AI, across your verticals?
So I think a lot more adoption of AI is definitely the need of the hour, and we are working on it very, very intensely. I don't view it as processes or jobs being outsourced to AI. It's about how can you get your workforce AI ready to use AI to become a lot more efficient.
Okay, so are you training your workforce to become AI ready?
Absolutely. We're doing two things. One is investing in AI across different industries to see what are the areas where AI can help us, and therefore develop and build on those. And also at the same time, train our workforce, and that too across levels, right? Right from the lowest to the senior most, on how they can use AI in their daily jobs, in their strategic planning, in their execution of strategy.
Shashwat, there is a lot of expectation from leaders like yourself who are young and who are at the, at the helm of big businesses to drive innovation. Because there has been criticism from the government itself that innovation is not coming from Indian businesses to the extent that it should be coming. So I want to get your thoughts in on that, and also the role of private sector going forward, because India has big ambitions. We've spoken about Viksit Bharat, we've spoken about India overtaking Japan, but in terms of investments, on-ground investments, private sector has somewhat held back. Any reasons for that? That has been holding back private investment. So that's actually two questions. Yeah.
So I take the innovation one
Sure.
first, right? And I think there's no two ways about innovation. I think innovation is something that you have to do, but innovation is not a big buzzword. I think it's something you have to do every day,
Right.
Whether it's innovating on something as small as how do you better organize your calendar to manage your work, to innovating at a product level, at a process level, at a strategy level for a company, right? And I think for us, innovation is core to all of our businesses. I also fundamentally believe that Indians are masters of innovation, right? It's about how we channel that innovation. If you really look at Jugaad, it is a very Indian concept. And what is it at the end of the day? It is about innovating. How can you do something more efficiently, right? And I think that's what we have to bring into our businesses. And we are doing that today as well. And to your second question, right, which
was about private sector not investing as
so
much.
I speak from our perspective. I think over the last decade, we have invested more than we ever have in the past. And when you look at the next 5 to 10 years, we are already planning some of our highest investments going forward as well. So we are not holding back, because I think today, under the leadership of the Honorable Prime Minister and his cabinet, I think we have policy consistency, policy stability. We have a vision for India. We have a vision for a Viksit Bharat. And I don't see why we should hold back, because we have to be part of this journey. We have to be enablers of this journey. And I mean, I'm a very, very proud Indian, very, very happy to be here at this point in time. I think we've never had a better space for India ever before. And I don't see any reason to not be bullish or to not invest.
Okay, and also the world is looking at India, and we see a lot of Indian businesses also collaborating with global businesses and helping them open set shop in India. Is that something that the group will be looking at as well?
So if you look at our group, it's been historically a group that's grown through acquisitions, and that's how by and large we've grown. But it's also been a group that believes very strongly in partnerships, both Indian and international. And so you will see a combination of that happening, right? And I think that will be true for a lot of the leading groups in India, where you will try and get best in class inputs if you need to import them from elsewhere in the world. And a lot of that may come through partnerships.
Okay. My last question. Who are the business leaders that you admire, and what are the specific qualities in them that you admire and that you bring to, or that you try and bring to the workplace every day?
So I think two leaders that I genuinely admire and every day look up to the new things that they do and how they do it. One is Mukesh Ambani. I think he has huge ambition, huge vision, and the ability to deliver on that vision and to go into the nth level of detail to deliver it well, right? And I think he's been someone who's been able to impact not just the Indian economy, but the global economy. And so I think that's something that I take away from him. And more importantly, the humility that he still has despite where he's reached today. I think that is the other thing that I take from him. And when I look internationally, I think Elon Musk is somebody I take a lot of inspiration from as well, because he is someone who has a lot of bold ideas and has the courage of conviction to follow through with them. He is someone who doesn't step back if he believes in an idea. And the belief is not something that comes just out of a whim or a fancy. It is really very heavily data driven, trend driven, and he really goes after it and creates and innovates new things, which actually show you that there is so much more that the world has to do.
Okay. If there was a business project which would be completely driven by passion, okay, what would that be? What is the passion that that could drive a business decision for you?
We've always grown up in our business family with an environment that your passion is your passion, but your business is your business, and the two don't need to meet, right? So I think that's fundamentally where I come from. But to be fair, I find passion in running businesses, in growing businesses. And for me, I have noticed over the last 12, 13 years of my work life so far is it's not linked to an industry or my own personal passion. It is just being able to, the drive that you get when you're kind of growing a business and growing it well. I think that's what I find passion in most.
All right. Well, very practical, Shashwat. And there we have it from Shashwat Goenka, a young business leader, one of India's most cutting edge leaders at the helm of one of India's most oldest businesses, talking about his leadership strategy, talking about building a business amidst a lot of uncertainty. But one thing which I found, Shashwat, was very interesting is how bullish you are on the India story. So we wish you the very best. Thank you so much. And a big thank you to all our viewers for tuning in. Do send us your thoughts and feedback. And of course, we'll be back next week with a fresh new episode. Thanks so much for watching.